And a happy Star Wars Day to all.
May the 4th be with you.
Yes, even though...
Barely.
Yeah.
For 45 more minutes.
So, when the time we're recording this, it's going to be Revenge of the 5th, so I guess it still technically counts.
Yeah, we got it in.
Not a word. Anyways, so, yeah, of course, in honor of Star Wars Day, we decided to go over A New Hope. See, this one's kind of tricky, because you say anything negative about it whatsoever, one, you're wrong, and two, a bunch of nerds are going to come to your house and blow it up. So, like, what I'll say for my first impression, this movie still, like to this day, you know, I've seen it 100 times, Dad's seen it 100 times. It just grips you from the beginning, and just it's one of those things where we talk about like the band Queen. Like, what makes the band Queen so good is that everyone is so good at what they do. In this movie, everyone's at the top of their game. You know what I mean? The actors are the best at acting. John Williams is the best at making the music, all the cinematography, the way that this story, like everything, everyone was at the top of their game for this movie, and I think that's what really pulls it together.
What's amazing is that the main characters were all a bunch of relative nobodies.
Yeah,
and George Lucas had only done one other big movie before that. Granted, he had help and other directors and whatnot, other assistants. But as far as pulling off something, lightning in a bottle, they definitely pulled that off. I don't see any other movie in my history of watching movies that captured the hearts and minds of the world like this movie. In my opinion, probably the most influential movie of all time.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think how that's what started a generation, you know what I mean? Like, every new sci-fi movie, every action movie, every comedy that would parody it to a certain extent, everyone to a certain extent was trying to be like Star Wars, or trying to do something that Star Wars did.
Well, it took everything to the next level. I mean, it's the Michael Jordan of sci-fi movies. It just leaps and bounds. I guess what would today's the Kobe Bryant? No, what's the kid's name from Warriors?
I don't follow basketball. Who follows basketball?
I don't know. The one that chews on his mouth guard all the time.
Who gives a crap?
Steph Curry.
Oh, Steph
Curry of, I guess, whatever. But Michael Jordan changed the game of basketball. Star Wars changed the way movies are made. It changed the way people watch movies. We can get onto that in another topic. So, first impressions. I can't really give you a first impression because this has been around as long as I've had any memory.
Maybe just substitute it for like the general feel of the movie.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. So, but the first time I watched this movie, I watched it in a theater that no longer exists. It's now been revamped into a craft store that then closed down. But the original trilogy is so wrapped up into my history of going to the movies with my dad, going to visit my uncle. There's a lot of sentiment in those three movies, and especially this first one. I remember the opening scene and then falling asleep in the aisle at Coddingtown Cinemas and waking up when it was over. That was it. But I grew up watching it on a dubbed videotape on VHS my whole life. I played with the action figures. We role played. We did all kinds of... Half of our games and playing and messing around growing up in my neighborhood were Star Wars based. But what I can give you is how it makes me feel to put the movie on every time. It brings me back to being a kid. It brings me back to the magic and excitement of watching the movie for the first time every time. Brings me back to watching it with you guys and renting the movie out for all the Star Wars movies and the feelings that creates. It's all wrapped around this movie. And, going to Galaxy's Edge, anything Star Wars based started with this. So it just holds a place in my heart that no other movie can compare to. Tombstone's my favorite movie. This is my favorite series. And not that this isn't my. It's hard to. Tombstone is just a different level of a movie.
That's what I was going to say.
It's hard to compare.
That's kind of the question that everybody asks, like with the majority of people, when you say like, "What's your favorite movie?" and then you have to say, "Oh, and, what's the first thing that everybody says?" Well, besides Star Wars,
yeah.
You know what I mean. Besides Empire Strikes Back, besides A New Hope, it's this movie because like it's just a given that's their favorite movie.
Well, in my favorite Star Wars movie is Empire. Not A New Hope. It's Empire, then A New Hope. But there's just such magic in this movie. It's unbelievable.
Well, that's the thing for me that just no matter what you think of the movie, no matter what happens, it's always going to be the one that started it all.
Yeah. I think the reason I like Tombstone better as a movie is as far as being my favorite movie is because there's a certain relatability to it that's attainable. It's here on Earth. It was only a few years back, in relative terms. It wasn't that long ago.
Right.
It wasn't in a galaxy far, far away. So this is so far-fetched, we have to wait for the future to catch up to be able to really wrap our minds around being able to have this be part of our lives where Tombstone doesn't. So anyway, not to go off on that tangent.
Right. But
those are my impressions.
Yeah. For me, it's just so the thing is, you have to bring it up right off the bat, and especially with most older, hardworking dads and short attention span kids. As great as this movie is, you have to be careful, or it will put you to sleep. It'll lull you to sleep a little bit because it's the good kind. It's the kind that I really miss in movies, but it's slow paced. It doesn't drag itself out, but it places everything perfectly, and it takes a while to build up to it.
It takes time to build an appropriate story. It does appropriate character development. It makes you care about the characters before they get into peril.
Right. But if you're watching this movie, especially kind of a later hour of the night like we were, you'll probably fall asleep. Yeah. It's a very relaxing movie. That's the kind of thing about it.
Yeah.
And I remember just for reference, when we were watching the movie, when I wanted to look at the timestamp when they finally all get in the Millennium Falcon, when they're on their way to go rescue Princess Leia. So like as soon as they escape from Tatooine, right? And you start getting into somewhat of the action of the movie. You get into like the meat of it. You're an hour into the movie.
You're an hour before they even get to the Death Star.
You're 55 minutes in, and but the thing is, it's because of build-up like that. You've got the scene where he's looking off into the two suns and the music plays. You've got Blue Milk. You've got I'm going to Takashi Station to pick up some power converters.
Yeah. All the quotes,
all the magic,
all the pop culture references.
The whole move along
are in the build-up.
These aren't the droids you're looking for. All these famous scenes, all these famous creatures, all these things. It all occurs in the slow build-up of the first hour of the movie.
Well, again, so many movies now you don't care about the principal characters. Compare this to the new ones. How long did it take to get into the action of Force Awakens? Right, I haven't seen it in a while, but what was the pace of that one? They blow up a town.
It's immediate because you've got the whole town blowing up.
But that is.
I guess that's fair.
It's on par with the hallway. The Tantive 5 scene where the stormtroopers come in and blast all the everybody, and then Vader comes in. It's no different than them coming in and then Kylo coming in and get the plans.
Yeah, that's fair.
But you introduce all the other characters. There's only the only introduction to Rey is her sliding down a hill and pilfering some parts and eating food.
You're gonna go off.
Sorry, a rabbit hole. Yeah, but my point is
maybe I should take. I think you're a little close to this.
Yeah. Sorry. My point is that if it had been paced the same without having to jump straight into the action and hold the attention span of short attention span audiences, the newer movies would have held up a little better. That's all I'm saying. We would have cared about the characters a lot more instead of, you know, their character development being punctuated by action scenes, unnecessary action scenes.
That's the great thing about this movie. You can have slow build up, you can have a bunch of build up, and all of this this sequence that leads to this great climax of the movie as it pays off. And and this movie has the best payoff there is. You blow up the Death Star. Like, name a more climactic moment in the movie than using the Force and blowing up the Death Star and with a 1 in a million shot and, defeating the Empire.
But in that hour, you immediately, not immediately, you figure out what the laser guns do, and that there's restraining bolts for droids. You understand how trade works in all these planets. You understand how their flight works, all their travel. You understand the economics and the politics, and you understand how an entire universe works, and that there's laser swords. And it sets the stage of what they can do and what they can't do.
Well, that was another thing that I wanted to bring up as I was watching this movie. Something you don't really see until you kind of look at it critically a little bit is there's no dead space in this movie, kind of like white space in a painting or a drawing.
Yeah.
There's none of that's in every piece plays a part.
Yeah.
And there's so many scenes that could have been. That could have just felt like they're just dragging it on and they're trying to fill for time. But with the way that it works, either the music's playing or, like you said, they're showing you restraining bolts, or you're looking at speeders, or you're learning about the Sand People, or you're learning about the Force, or you're going over history. Like if you look at just the first hour of A New Hope, and if I were to sit someone down and just tell them to watch it normally, but I pause it after the first hour, so right after they escape Tatooine, right? I would ask them, what do you know so far?
Yeah.
Oh, we know Darth Vader, we know the rebellions, we know stormtroopers, we know the plans, Princess Leia. They can go on and on.
You don't learn much else after that.
No, the rest
it's just action.
The rest of it's just the Death Star.
Yeah.
And you learn about the rebellion a little bit, the way that it looks, but with the whole Death Star, it's all action until they escape with with snippy dialogue in between.
Yeah.
But
so that's where I'm saying, lightning in a bottle, because you have relatively unknown. The only two big names in that movie were Alec Guinness and Peter Cushing.
Well, that was another thing I wanted to bring
But they were
up.
also British actors. They weren't as well known. It wasn't John Wayne. It wasn't, Robert Redford or something. All these bigger names of that era that they could have used. It was two European actors that people were familiar with. But you're talking about two titans of their craft who bring something great to the table for both the good side and for the bad side.
Exactly.
I mean, Vader is thought of as one of the most powerful, destructive forces and best bad guys ever. And, Leia even points it out. Oh, I thought you'd be holding Vader's leash. That no matter how much power Vader has, one of the most powerful Force users in history, and Tarkin snaps his fingers and Vader listens through respect, fear, admiration, all the above. He's like a father figure for him.
That's one thing that I always loved about Grand Moff Tarkin, him as a character, was that he Vader is the walking death threat, but Tarkin's the boss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just and not even he doesn't even ask Vader. He is total command. There's Vader, release him.
Yeah.
And he does it.
Well, it's kind of like the parallel between the Emperor when he's still Chancellor, but he's in the Emperor role when he's got Darth Maul, and he just flips the switch, and Darth Maul attacks. Darth Maul is a very powerful force to be reckoned with, but the Emperor just snaps his fingers in it, and it happens. He makes it happen.
Right.
But then, so Alec Guinness on the other side, just in your first meeting with him, where he comes in and rescues Luke after the Tusken Raiders attack him. And I pointed it out to you when we were watching the movie where Luke's talking about him, talking about, oh, I thought he meant old Obi-Wan, blah, blah, blah. And the subtle shift in his face, you can tell that he's reminiscing and he's thinking about everything that happened in the Clone Wars. And this is, for me, I watched this movie for 20-ish years, somewhere, whatever it was, before I even had a Clone Wars to reference. There were rumors and speculations about some lava volcano fight that Obi-Wan and Vader had gotten into, but no one really even knows where it came from originally, what the backstory came from. It was just rumor and speculation and fan, theory, kind of, the origins of fan theory. But we knew that growing up, like around the Empire phase, we kind of had that information had gotten out pre-internet. Anyway, that look on his face, and then just the little bit of dialogue about the Force and what it is. It's one line, right?
Right.
And then his little bit about the training. The training, he just says a couple words to him about, feel it, reach out, feel it, flowing through you, all that. And then he blocks the shots when he's on the Falcon training. Just the subtlety and all the things that Alec Guinness does brings such power to each scene that he's in. So the gravity of those two characters is amazing. But then Lucas, I don't know if it was deliberate. I mean, the guy studied his craft very well. He went, through school and he brought elements from the movies that he liked into it. But I don't know if he deliberately kept it all vague. But the vagueness is what created the fan universe that goes far beyond what the movie even offers and captures the spirit and imagination of everybody who's ever watched these movies and takes it to the next level. That's why you get the most passionate fans upset when they throw something in like midi-chlorians in, and they have to walk that back in every other movie, because it's like, wait a minute, we grew up thinking this was, this just the powerful thing that flows through everything, that connects everything together, not little microscopic organisms. You're kind of wrecking it for us, because it was magical, it was mystical in its origins. So don't over-explain it.
Yeah, you don't want to make something like that so quantifiable. You know what I mean? You don't want to stack a number onto it, because as soon as you stack a number onto something, it loses its soul, or it loses its life.
So the original spiritual side to everything about the Force, again, I don't know if it was deliberately vague or just throw in what we need because I can't come up with anything else. But people filled in the blanks for the last 46 years. For how long has it been? 40, yeah.
So between
77 to now. What are we at?
77 to, I thought you meant like 77 to the prequels, but
44 years.
Yeah. Wow.
That's how long people have been filling in the blanks that the movie offers. That's why the slow pace is great. That's why the voids are there and not over explaining everything. And that's why I know why I love it.
Well, that was another thing that I wanted to bring up, was just all the acting in the movie was just phenomenal. Mm-hmm. There was absolutely no dead weight in the cast, and everybody, you could tell they knew how to flesh out their characters. And with movies like this that are so like out there, like think about it in the terms of there is no Star Wars yet, and you're making a Star Wars movie. Like if they were just to sit you down, tell you nothing, you start watching, and you're like, what is going on? And you're trying to, and all these actors who are hearing about this and having to go through this, I can only imagine what it was like. But I love the idea that they took it completely seriously, and they fleshed out all their characters, and they gave them all life. And so, guess what? Now everybody loves C-3PO. Everybody loves R2. Everybody loves Luke, Leia, Han. Everybody has
for a movie that everybody thought was a joke.
Yeah.
No one took it seriously. No one wanted to fund it. People thought it was a career killer. Alec Guinness is like, fine, I'll do it, and gave it everything. but didn't think anything was going to happen of it. Didn't even think it'd make it to the theater, so that it wouldn't ruin his career, even if it tried. That's how little anybody took it seriously, because it was unlike any other movie that had been made.
It was a big risk.
Yeah.
It was a risk, and it massively paid off.
Well, to your point about all the actors all delivering, is that it really lends to the no small parts, just small actors. You can watch a movie, and if there's a part where a subpar actor comes in and delivers a line so really poorly.
Oh,
kind of like
The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I was just going to say the two guys in The Mandalorian.
In the only other comparable part of Star Wars to the original trilogy, it's bringing back the magic of the original trilogy, is The Mandalorian. That's the only thing fans will follow as religiously as the OT. And there's what was it, episode 4? Episode 4, because episode 3 he escapes. Yeah. So episode 4. You get the two guys. What was the other? I saw.
You meet Cara Dune, and then he gets contracted by these two guys that show up, and we've seen him in. I can't remember what movie we saw the other day.
Saw him in a movie where they were.
He was a good actor. He's a talented actor.
Oh no, I saw him in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I think.
Whatever it was. Anyway, we saw him, and he was a talented actor, and really did his part well. But in The Mandalorian, it just seems almost like they're reading off cue cards behind the cameraman's head. It's shabby.
It literally looks like a kid's acting. I guess we got to go back to our.
We're gonna walk all the way back.
We got to walk all the way back to our safe lodging away from the Empire that nobody knows about. That's perfect for the Mandalorian, with all these credits in our pocket. And he's
like they're over enunciating, overacting, overselling it.
You know what it reminds me of, and this is like total tangent right here. Which, by the way, we are filling time, because what are we going to do with the negative section in this movie? What that reminded me of, I was watching the other day, The Dark Knight, right? So I like him in the rest of the movie, but there's one scene that I just hate. Was the Mr. Reese guy, Mr. Reese. He was the one who Morgan Freeman was like, your plan is to blackmail this person, where he thinks he's got Batman caught, and he wants it's like the scene where he's like he's talking about how it's embarrassing. And he's like, I'm sure he's wondering how his trust fund gets renewed, but this is embarrassing. He's like, run the numbers again. Then he's like, it's fine. The numbers are solid. And he's like looking at the ground. I don't know what, like a lapse in acting or whatever, but it takes me out of the scene every single time. And I'm just like, he's good for the rest of the movie though. But even in a movie like that, so that one little spot will take you out of it.
Yeah. Even the people you never see again. The guy complaining about the Death Star, when they're going over the plans that everybody thinks is Wedge and it's not. He's complaining about it, but he's into the role. It's like, what are you expecting us to do? And he's a nobody. No offense to him, but he was. I've never seen him. I don't know who he is. I've probably never seen him in any movie since. The dude that walks in and tells Tarkin and Vader that that there was a ship that just came in. That just all the little troopers that come up and just report things. They do it really well.
No one held back. That's what I love about this. And what I love too is you look at some of the interviews, right? Even now, like over 40 years later, I think Mark Hamill did something like this recently on a talk show where it was just after they're getting out of the trash compactor, and everyone's all mesmerized by his perfect Harrison Ford impression, but he talks about how he asked Harrison, he's like, well, we just got out of here, my hair was like, shouldn't I have like a bunch of stuff in my hair, shouldn't it be wet, shouldn't it be messy? And then Harrison Ford was like, look kid, it's not that kind of movie. He's like, if they're paying attention to like your hair and stuff like that, then we're in trouble. Yeah. And what everybody talks about like the impression and how funny it was, but in my head it's like, well, Harrison Ford, like he knew what the movie was going to be. Like he knew what needed to happen to make this movie successful. And I think there was that. I can't tell. I can only speculate from what I saw from this many years later, at the age that I am. That I think everybody on the cast and the crew knew the deal, knew what needed to happen, and they just understood it.
Well,
you know what I mean?
they knew if they didn't give it their all, it was going to fall flat because it had a really good chance of falling flat anyway. And it would have been a career killer.
They knew they had to give it their all, and they knew where to focus their efforts.
Yeah.
So like, you don't focus your efforts on making the hair look super good after the trash compactor.
Yeah.
You focus your efforts on, getting them to the Millennium Falcon, keeping the dialogue running.
Yeah.
And,
those kind of continuity issues are not that big a deal. And you don't.
Well, that was another thing in this movie. The reason it's going to be so hard to nitpick when we get onto that section, which is why I am dragging this out.
Don't need to drag it out. Just there's other stuff.
I know. I'm just kidding. But there's no logical fallacies in this movie. Like every scene has a point to it, and there's a reason that they do everything. It's like you go look at other movies and. Amanda 3PO and R2 were hiding in the closet, right? But they didn't say anything about stormtroopers coming or the storm. The point I'm trying to make is, you ever watch a movie and you're like, wait, why did they just happen to be in that part of the ship, or why do they just happen to be right there?
Yeah, the right place, right time was for a reason.
It's too convenient.
So, the right place, right time would be Han swooping in at the last minute. But there's a reason he wasn't there for the whole trench run. There's a reason he decided. He's probably listening, probably monitoring. He saw it was down to just Luke. He was having an attack of conscience as he was leaving with all his money. Got in range, and he's like, okay, wait a minute. I like this kid. I got to go help.
It's not
and
like
he got there just in time, and that happens. It's not that he was not going to come back at all anyway. There's emotion that drew him back, and you accept that for the perfect timing. Not, I thought you were, still frozen in carbonite. How are you here now? Well, let me give you a movie's worth of backstory to explain why I magically showed up.
Right, exactly. And the thing is, the reason that scene works so great is because that's the end of his character arc. That's the end of the Han Solo story for that movie. Was he comes back?
Yeah. And
he shows his true nature.
Yeah.
And that's where, the big three come to be.
Yeah.
And that's this movie, when I was thinking about it, the overarching thing when I was watching this whole movie, especially thinking about what I'm going to bring up here, was it's just so well formatted. Every scene, the way everything's laid out, the way they describe everything, the way everything is plotted out, the logistics of everything, it just lines up so well.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, I can't find anything wrong with it.
Well, I think it was Lucas's wife at the time that did the editing. She edited the movie after he had already done the original edit and people didn't like it. She re-edited and put it together and made the movie what it is.
Well, if there's one thing we know about George Lucas, is he needs an advisor.
Yes.
You can't let him do it by himself.
He gets lost in the technical parts. So one of the greatest things that still holds up, in my opinion, to today's movies is the sets, the props, the costumes. All of it holds up to today's standards. Not only does it hold up to today's standards, but it set the standard that all other props and extras and everything else is actually trying to build up to or trying to be like. And even when you look at Pacific Rim, which I think is a great movie as far as costume design, their functionality of the costumes, that their armor that they're wearing inside the Jaegers, is not far off of what the original Stormtrooper costumes were created worked the whole 9 yards. And that stuff was kind of cobbled together and hot glued and just thrown on. But everything on every set, unless it was deliberately white, like the Tantive 5, but the good guys had white ships, and the bad guys had dark ships and dark walls in their ships and whatnot. A lot of symbolism with all of that.
Well, there was even stuff like that in Return of the Jedi that I was looking around at some of that stuff today just for fun because everyone's doing May the 4th posts.
Yeah.
And they talk about how it's so obvious right off the bat. Anybody who's seen Star Wars, Luke wearing the black robes and Return of the Jedi, it's like, ooh, he's getting a little... but when he's fighting Darth Vader near the end, a little white flap on the inside of the robe comes out, and you're watching that, and you're like, oh, okay, now,
Yeah, he's pulling back to the light side.
Everybody gets the picture.
But when you look at just the opening sequence and running through that ship, you've got bits and pieces glued onto every corner. You've got the little, I don't know what they are, the little cubby holes in the hallway. The walls curve into the floor, and there's little bits and pieces glued everywhere. Then they go into the more I don't know, industrial part of the ship, where there's like upside down garbage cans, the round lid garbage cans in the backs, and pipes and tubing and little bits glued here and lights, and it's all random. It doesn't mean anything, but it looks good. And then they also weathered everything. They aged it all appropriately. So when you look at it, it still holds up to, we just watched it in 4K on an 8K TV. That's the best quality you and I have ever watched that movie on.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
And you're seeing every detail. Like, I saw a crack in C-3PO's suit, or where the gold leafing or whatever that they put on was peeling back or something, that I had never seen before. And I've seen this movie seriously 200 times at least. And I was seeing new stuff. That's the quality of the picture that we were watching. So all of it, in my opinion, holds up. There are some things that I'm sure someone who knows the jet, a Rolls-Royce jet engine part, saw that the IG-88 head that's in the cantina, they knew what it was, and it still wouldn't necessarily pull them out of the movie just because of all the extras and the way it was set in.
Well, to be fair, you could make the theory that he's using an old recycled IG-88 head to make drinks.
No, but the fact that, what I'm saying is a plane mechanic would know where that part came from.
Right.
But even if you knew where the part came from, you don't care. Like in a new, Phantom Menace, when Qui-Gon is checking the midi-chlorian, he's talking into a woman's razor painted gray. And I know it. I knew it the minute I saw it. But I don't care. It doesn't take me out of the movie. Like, cool, good use. That's great. You paint something metallic gray, and all of a sudden it's a Star Wars.
There was only one thing of we can use this kind of transition into the nitpicky phase.
Go ahead, because anyway, phenomenal acting, phenomenal.
Sure, I'll wrap it up before
No, I'm just saying it's good. Good transition.
So the only thing that kind of pulled me out of that just a little bit was it's something you can only really get with the picture, but the interrogation droid scene, right?
Yeah.
When they're about to interrogate Leia, and she's making the face, and it zooms in on the needle on the droid. Now, in my head, it's kind of a draw at first, very realistic looking hospital needle, and with the little milliliters drawn on it. That they thankfully still use our metric system. But I'm like, that's just me kind of pulling at strings. I'm like, you would assume they would have something like that, and then you keep zooming in, and they're very intentionally blurring out a brand name on the side of the needle. And
it's like sanded off
of like a little plastic tube, and it's like kind of dripping around a little bit. And I'm like, okay, you couldn't have rotated it a little bit just to make it a clear plastic tube, because I'm pretty sure I saw like a Kaiser Permanente written on the side or something.
So that's the other thing. Kind of, again, this is the line between what's great about it and what you can nitpick. This movie was made back when they would hold up their hands, make the little rectangle with their fingers, the finger to thumb L's, and see what the shot looked like, and just frame in the shot.
Right.
And it didn't matter what the background looked like. But then you re-release it in letterbox, or you re-release it in a new format, and now you're expanding the picture, and it still works. Mm-hmm. The shot's still framed in. And it was, you're talking blurry 35 millimeter or whatever film they used back in the day, where you filmed it on film. You took and made multiple copies of that film, and then sent the reel, the actual film reel. You've seen them in the collection case.
I know
that
what a film reel is.
You sent that reel out, and it got worn and faded. Every time you shine the light through it, it faded it more. It only had a certain shelf life. And the film broke down, and it was grainy, and the lenses were only so great on these cameras. So the fact that you can clean it up, they did the digitally remastered, and there's some parts that I like about the remastering where they cleaned up the film, because if you look at it next to what I originally watched as a kid in the theater and on VHS, it is grainy. It is blurry.
Believe me, we're going to get into the nitpicking of the special edits, because that's really
that's the transition.
That's the main meat. But the thing I will say, I won't say that the remaster or some special edits weren't completely justified.
Yeah, but my point is that you didn't have to. There's other movies we've watched where we watched it in 4K. They did a 4K re-edit of an old movie. And then you look at it, and they weren't expecting you to be able to see the writing. Like on Darth Vader's lightsaber, it's a flash handle for an old. Both the original lightsabers were flash handles to lights. What do you call it? Old cameras. Obi-Wan's was actually like part of a grenade from World War II, and parts from faucets and sink parts and whatnot. But the other two, Luke and Vader's, were both flash handles. The label of the brand is still on the lightsaber, because they didn't expect you to see it.
Well, a good example of that.
The film quality was not so good that if you held up a cup, you'd be able to see the barcode on the bottom.
Right.
They didn't expect you to see it ever. So now when you go and digitally remaster things, and then you're making it 4K detail or 8K detail, and you still aren't pulled out of the movie because of the stuff they weren't worried about hiding. It's like the wires on C-3PO's stomach. He's wearing a black suit, and he's got like a handful of wires kind of just plugged and played in there, but it still holds up. And if you were to watch the old Star Trek digitally remastered, you see the twine that's holding things together still, because they didn't expect you to be able to break it down to such detail 40 years after the fact.
Yeah.
And the fact that it still holds up to remastering and looking at it and analyzing it under 4K or 8K, it's incredible that it still holds its own. So with that being said, there's also the realistic tangibles are better. There are some silly puppets and silly masks that were in the cantina scene that they did digital versions over the top of, like the character with the baggy hat. I don't know. It's
the weird tadpole looking thing that was smoking something.
Yes, which they then used that character in The Mandalorian and tied it in a little better, or that type of creature. But when you look at that character versus the ones that are actually there, like Snaggletooth. Snaggletooth is there. He looks good. It looks like a creature that's drinking having a drink at the cantina. Then there are some that look like Halloween masks, like the skeleton or the devil, and you're like,
I was going to say,
okay, those are cheesy.
Every time I watch the movie, especially the first time, I remember like the first time I watched it, or I think I was watching it in passing. I was like a little kid or whatever, and you guys were just watching it, and I was grabbing something from the kitchen, and it's a cantina scene, and I'm like, what is Satan doing in this movie?
Well, there's a giant praying mantis in the background that no one notices either.
Right.
And that, I think, is probably from some other sci-fi movie where they had to have a big praying mantis that they stole or bought and used for the movie.
Something from like an old Godzilla movie or something.
Yeah, some old B movie that they made. And like, oh, well, here's a giant, mantis costume. You put someone in, use that.
If I was going to do something like Star Wars, like back in that day, like, hey, we need all sorts of robots and creatures we can get. Like, if you can go to like any set or call any of your buddies in Hollywood, be like, hey, you got any extras? You got any like whatever? You're like, well, I've got this, I got that. I got a praying mantis full size costume. Yeah, sure, I'll take it.
Well, I think Bosk's spacesuit is like straight from like an old Doctor Who or something. I just saw it the other day. It was some old black and white space movie or a movie where they were going into space, and the costume is exactly what Bosk is wearing. That is just recycled parts because again they didn't expect you to look with such detail, and the fact that it still holds up after the nerdiest of fan bases, and I say that lovingly because I am one, analyzing the backstory and coming up with the mythical manufacturer of the clothing line.
That's what I was going to bring up with the Bosk costume that you said. I'm like, as soon as you were saying that, I'm thinking to myself, but yeah, with all the black and white and whatever, but then you've got people breaking it down like this is actually the traditional animal that Trandoshans would hunt, and he's wearing its skin or something. That's why it's this color. Yeah. And you break that down so much, and you write the story around that, but people love it.
Yeah,
because here's the thing, they love the costume.
Yeah,
so they want to create their own story for it.
Well, when you didn't even know who Bosk was until someone made up the name, and it was on the action figure. So
some kid with a lisp trying to call him Boss, like it's Bosk. What? Bosk? Okay, we'll call him Bosk.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, the worst part, the nitpicking, is all the CG extra stuff.
That's really all you can do.
It doesn't hold up. You have the technology now. Go back and clean up the what do you call it? The
CG.
CG. Thank you. Go back and clean up the CG stuff that you cleaned up 20 years ago or added. So the stormtroopers riding on the dewbacks is garbage.
Well,
because the bodies don't move right. They don't articulate like a normal human body. And you can see the difference of the actual one that was there as a real prop, and then you can see the digital ones moving, and the digital ones are garbage.
Well, my thing is, it's like, one, and the overarching thing for me was, even when they're not taking up the entire screen, which they were sometimes, whenever you see them, the way they move and the way that they're animated and the way that they do it, it rips your eyes away from what's really going on. So like even there's like a scene
they're holding up the washer and say, "Hey, look, sir, droids," and your eye can't help but look at the awkwardly moving stormtrooper on the lizard in the background.
Exactly. And here's the other thing that really bugged me about it. For the special edits, like, can those things never shut up? Like, he needed to know, like, you need you to know, hey, the special edit's here. So, like, even when that frickin' droid is flying by, you hear the little as it's making its flyby, and I'm like, and it's just, and you hear those little lizard creatures. I forgot exactly what they're called. They won't stop their roaring and their moaning.
Yeah.
And then there's that one scene that I hate with all my being, where the giant
the
one,
Ronto or the Brontosaurus or whatever,
the giant
walks and blocks the screen.
Walks and blocks the entire screen, and that's like the transition.
Well, and they got a droid moving, metal pipes. It's like, great, you're really building out the town. Now, having Mos Eisley look bigger than it did in the original shot looks good. They added more buildings. They added more scenery. They make it look like an actual metropolitan is out backwoods as it is.
Kind of what Mos Eisley was supposed to be.
Yeah, made it look like a big town that he didn't have the budget or the money or the ability to make it look like when he originally did it, or a matte painting to make it look bigger. But that stuff is good. Subtle, less is more. Just like the original movie.
Well, I will
Don't try and add so much.
My favorite special edit, by far, is when they added the sound effect for the stormtrooper who hits his head on the door in the Death Star.
Well, no, you can actually... I thought you could hear it originally.
You can barely hear it, but
they made it stand out.
Yeah, they added in the sound effect because might as well lean into it.
Well, and I love the fact that he has to then stand guard. You stay here.
Well, yeah. Well, the other part of it, the thing about that is, from like the movie Fanboys, the problem with nitpicking this movie with not being the special edits is that the flaws in this movie are still its strengths.
Yes.
Because it gives it its life.
Well, like you said, the little meme or the quote or whatever about it, your favorite lightsaber battle is between two old men who are barely moving.
Yeah, two old geezers gently poking a stick.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. But the other thing is...
But I like that better than the jumping and the flipping and the spinning around and the twirling.
Sometimes...
The kicking. It's like, hey, listen, a sword fight would only take so long. You're only going to be so risky with it when you know someone else is swinging a lightsaber at you. So you're not going to do all this nonsense.
Yeah, my philosophy is when having no mistakes helps you get immersed into a movie, but having a few mistakes and or letting people peek behind the curtain lets them connect with it. So like the thing I kind of compare it to is that scene in is it Fellowship of the Ring or the one where Viggo breaks his toe and everyone talks about?
Oh yeah, Two Towers.
It was Two Towers. Yeah, it's in Two Towers. So it's a big internet thing. It's a big joke. It's a big meme. Where that scene where Viggo Mortensen kicks the helmet. If anybody is showing their friends that movie for the first time, it is required by law that every single person watching that movie leans over and immediately says, "Did you know that Viggo Mortensen actually broke his toe in that scene?
Yeah.
That's why he screams out like that."
Yeah.
But here's the thing: that's what helps you kind of connect with the movie because you love watching behind the scenes stuff. Everybody loves knowing what actually happened in that scene. So like that's what I mean with the stormtrooper scene where he hits his head. It's that same little moment.
They could have framed him out of it so you didn't even see it happen.
Right.
They could have shot it. It didn't require any, faced actors, doing it. They could have redone the entire shot.
They could have just reshot
but
it.
They left it. But with that is Mark Hamill screaming, "Carrie!" You rewound it, and when he gets off the X-wing after the TIE fighter or after they blow up the Death Star, he gets out of his ship and runs down and screams "Carrie" after she calls him Luke. And it sounds kind of like, "Hey," you can't really tell unless you slow it down and listen to it and you know what he's saying. But they left it in there. It's a kind of little gem, a little nugget that doesn't really ruin the movie or pull you out of the movie. It's just a fun little thing.
Not at all. And the thing for me with that scene is it's the same, the Carrie one or the bonk in his head thing. It's the same to me as the breaking his toe in Two Towers, where it calls you back to, I know what actually happened during that scene. It was just a mistake because you can't see in the helmet. Yeah. So he bonked his head on there, and it helps you kind of fall in love with that side of Star Wars.
Some grip or gaffer, whoever is supposed to be sliding the door up behind the screen or out on the other side of the wall. There's someone pulling a rope attached to a pulley that's raising that door. It's not really a motorized door. It is a piece of plywood being shifted up by someone holding a rope, and I'm sure it's not light. And he didn't pull it up high enough for the tallest guy acting as a stormtrooper to make it through without clipping his head, because he was one of the first ones through. Well, it's just funny.
I think in that scene, and this is just my pure speculation here, since they had to break in through the door, I imagine they told him to open it, but don't open it all the way. Kind of like that scene when they swing across the chasm, how it opens bit by bit by bit. But that's just my theory. But hang on, we have to bring this up. You're talking about special edits. You're talking about anything.
This is what I'm.
You and I both know what we're talking about. You want to say the phrase on 3? 1, 2, 3.
Han Solo first.
I was gonna say Han Solo shot first, but Han shot first.
So this is the problem with going back and messing with perfection.
Yeah, that's my thing. Why would you even do it?
Well, because it's it was to reshape your outlook on Han Solo, because Han Solo originally was this bad guy scoundrel, and he had a change of heart at the end and came back and saved Luke. And they didn't think that was enough of a redemption, and this good guy, this bad guy turned good guy, could be that bad, so they wanted to clean up and justify him shooting Greedo. And I have a hard time not saying Guido because your mom has said it so many times.
Oh,
Greedo, actually, in the first or the original edition, you don't see Han Solo shooting. You don't see Greedo shooting. All you see is an explosion on the table, and you see Greedo fall.
Because guess what? Laser shots were expensive. So guess what? We're cutting it and we're putting an explosion there.
Yeah. Well, and he did it from under the table.
Well, that's another thing you can tell with Luke when he ignites the lightsaber. Like more than once, whenever they ignite the lightsaber, you can see the little clip in the frame where it's just so funny.
Yeah, where you know that someone ran into the scene and plugged in the lightsaber part. But on the original, on the first lightsabers for the first movie, they had the handle actually had a wire attached to it, that ran the motor, or it was battery powered or whatever it was, but it ran a motor, and the little reflective material inside the plastic tube spun around to reflect the light, and then they colored it. So it was old school. That's why if you look at like Darth Vader's lightsaber when he's battling Obi-Wan, there's a little chip in that. So the original, like old school projector screens that we had when I was a kid, you'd roll them up, and they had like this reflective gray, silvery stuff. It wasn't just white. It was like a reflective, probably toxic as all get out, but it's like this reflective, glittery stuff, almost like you see on someone's like reflective vest, the striping kind of thing.
Right.
Where you turn a light on it. They use it now for like rims on cars, so it looks like Tron when you shine a light on it.
Oh, yeah.
But in daylight, you can't really tell. That was what they used for the original lightsabers, and it spun around to give it that flashy look, that textured look. That's why there's errors in it, or so many, missteps, or whatever you want to call it. So many little chips and flinches in the way it looks is because it's not CG'd in afterwards. But not only by redoing Greedo shooting first, you made an unnatural head movement. You tried to reinvent a character that we already knew and loved for 15, 20 years, however long it was. What was it, 99 where they did the remake? So 22 years. And now all of a sudden you're trying to add this element to change who Han Solo is, to make him a little softer around the edges and justify him killing Greedo, other than just the need to get out and not be blasted or taken himself. So, and then, like you said, double down and make it worse.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The fact that there was a double down edit, and I wasn't even super aware of it, because it was always just, I bet you have, and then Greedo shoots, but, technically Han shoots. I'm not even willing to say it, but what's it called? But then now when we were watching it, there was like a 2-second scene where he talks for like another 2 seconds, and I'm like, what was that? Like, after all of that, you double down?
Well, and it changes the pace of the entire scene. It's the subtlety of unsnapping his blaster from the holster and keeping Greedo distracted, and then I bet you have. The point is, I bet you have. There's emphasis on that phrase because that's when he pulls the trigger. Like, I got you. I was able to sneak my gun out of the holster while you were jabbering on, you rookie bounty hunter. You fool, I got you. And they drops him.
Smooth talking mercenary, and you completely ruin the entire pacing of the scene.
Well,
by you make it
and
clunky.
then he goes and tosses a couple credits to the bartender to clean up a dead guy off the table. Says sorry about the mess and walks out like it. Not worried about you calling anybody, even though the town is filthy with stormtroopers.
To be fair, Obi-Wan did just chop a guy's arm off like 20 seconds.
And no one cared.
Yeah.
Yeah. Point is, though, it wasn't a retaliatory, I'm going to save my own skin. Luckily, I was taking my gun out of the holster already, and I dodged a laser blast.
Yeah, plus
you saw his fingers starting to squeeze the trigger, so you moved your head and dodged something that's moving at the speed of light. That's impressive, Neo.
When in reality, in the scene, he's tilting his head a little bit to line his head up with his gun to make sure he gets the shot right. But here's the thing that bugs me about it.
It was an emphasis. Yeah, I'll bet you have, and he tilts his head.
I'll bet you have, and then he leans into his shot a little bit.
Yeah.
But the thing that bugs me about it the most is look at his character for the rest of the movie. He's not willing to even think about saving Princess Leia, and he actually says the phrase "better her than me."
Yeah,
those are not the two same people.
Yeah,
that's why the only reason people can still watch it and enjoy it is because nobody accepts the special edit.
Exactly.
It's like
it's a denial.
You know what? It's take that droid, to take that droid to the station tomorrow and erase his memory.
Well, it's the Tobias scene, where he's talking to Lucille in Arrested Development.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, go watch the series. Where he says, Lucille, there's a concept in psychology where something is so painful that the human mind just blocks it out. Because you are a worse doctor or worse psychiatrist than you are a son-in-law, and you'll never have an acting career because you're a terrible person. And he goes, well, if you're not going to listen, I can't explain it to you. And his mind blocks it out, which is what he was just saying. But that's what happens to all of Star Wars fandom. Their mind blocks it out, and they just go on as if it was the original.
Yeah, I bet you have. What's going on? Han shot first.
Yeah,
okay,
no.
Throws the credits.
Your mind goes blank for the 2-second
cool.
gap that they've messed it up, and then you go back to watching the movie.
Straight up mental gymnastics.
Then it jumps into the second worst. I mean, I'll take your little lizards running around and your droids and your little extra bits and baubles that you want to use to really dress up the scene. Whatever, I don't care. But when you change the story, it drives me nuts, especially. So Han shot first, and then it leads you into
the Jabba scene?
He goes back and runs into Jabba and Boba Fett and all the other cronies and another Greedo character in the same exact jumpsuit.
Another Rodian that looks exactly like Greedo.
Yeah, because every, Gamorrean guards had a uniform. It makes sense. They're all little pigmen that wear these fur loincloths. Whatever. It's a uniform. I get it. But a Rodian bounty hunter doesn't necessarily have a uniform. Change the outfit. It'll be okay.
Well, yeah.
Whatever. Point is, they just use the same dude, and put him back in a different shot because it wasn't fleshed out yet.
Forget it. People know he's dead.
Just call it a different Rodian, even though it's the same guy. But the scene is so awkward because originally it was filmed with a human person standing there. Is a bigger guy, and they didn't know what Jabba was going to be or what he was going to look like. So they missed their mark, but George Lucas wanted to have done it so badly, and his biggest regret was not having the money or the technology to do his original vision. And it's going back, and like we always talk about, doing something because you can, not because you should. And he went and threw that scene in because he could, not because he should. At the point that he did it, he should have just let it go.
The one thing I'll say...
Time has passed, the ship has sailed,
yeah.
Move on, leave it alone.
I very distinctly remember when we were watching it was after the canteen scene, you had the arm chopping off scene, and I'm like, okay, that was, reinvigorating my old nostalgia of watching the movie when I was a kid too, and I'm liking it. And you get into the whole Han shot first, and then you have all the special edits before that, and then you have that. I remember as soon as they escaped, in my head, like the dialogue played in my head, I just went, man, that was a little rough. Like it's a little those few patches of scenes, it's a little rough because of the special edits.
It changes the pacing of the movie.
It changes the pace, it changes everything, and it's really condensed into like those 10 or 15 minutes where he really changes most of it, and because it's like one of the most influential parts of the movie. But
so
I remember I was like, man, that was almost hard to watch because of all the special edits.
So going back to the good changes, they added more X-wings, in the original attack to match how many X-wing pilots there were and to make it look a little more legit. And that part's good. And then the other thing they changed, which I can appreciate, is when Han Solo's chasing the stormtroopers down the hallway screaming. Yeah. And he gets to the end of the hallway, and you didn't even realize it was a special edit.
I never knew that was. I always thought that was real.
So, original, you mean?
So I thought that was the real movie is what I meant to say.
So on the original film, he comes around the corner, and they had the opportunity to turn around and be ready for him. So he sees the 4 or 5 stormtroopers that he had just been chasing, and now they're ready for him. And he comes around the corner and is like, "Oh!" And it's the same response. And he runs. He blasts one and runs. But in the special edition or the add-on, he runs into a room with a whole bunch of stormtroopers. And that makes it funnier, makes it make more sense. It's actually like, oh wow, I really made a wrong turn.
Yeah, it was always, that scene was always so funny to me.
Yeah.
Well, the one legitimate nitpick I have that you reminded me of just there was you got to talk about Stormtrooper aim.
Yeah.
So like in the very beginning scene when 3PO and R2D2 they're looking down back and forth, and it's down a hallway where they're just sitting there like Revolutionary War style, might as well be shooting muskets at each other because there's just no cover in between, and C-3PO and R2D2 just waltz right through.
Yeah, and within the first 2 minutes of the movie, you're like, okay, how did those two droids just get right through the middle of a gunfight without getting hit?
They walk right through completely unscathed, and I'm like, what the? And I'm like, that was ridiculous. But here's the thing,
because they didn't care enough about droids to waste their ammo on it, so they're like, eh.
The problem with that is, it's like, once again, it's another nitpick that becomes a strength because everybody loves the joke of Stormtrooper aim.
Well, it's not just that. It's like, okay, if something you didn't need to or want to destroy, especially if you're looking for data, you want to keep the droids around. So when the droids come walking through, you deliberately miss them and hold your fire and shoot around them. Imagine if you're playing airsoft and a kid comes walking through. You're not going to shoot without regard of whether or not you hit the kid. You're just going to move your head and move the gun and fire. You're going to fire around them.
Let's leave my decision making for if we cross that bridge.
Well,
but
that's an ethical conversation for another time.
That is a question of how old the kid is.
Yeah. So my point is,
if we're talking 12 and above, that kid's getting nailed.
You're just going to move around. No, human nature would be you'd move around. You'd shift your line of sight.
But my thing is, even if you are doing that with 8 people on either side, it's very, very, very implausible that they would make it through without even so much as a grace.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing: you even see this. Well, actually, this is me. Retrospect. They do a lot of this in the new stuff, but I guess it wasn't really a thing back then. It's where like even if the shot doesn't hit you, but it just barely misses you, the sheer heat of most of the laser blasts would kind of sear your skin a little bit. So, but they had scorch marks on them. They had little. Yeah. They were roughed up. They were a
worse
bit
for the wear. Yeah.
So I can assume they, but. And the other part with the whole escape pod and not blowing it up, you can leave that. You can leave that up. You can leave that up to your own speculation because there's some legitimate theories on that. But my thing is, it's like, why even measure for signs of life? It's not like the stormtroopers or Darth Vader's going to try and escape. And we want confirmation that the data plans were destroyed.
If see an escape pod, blow it up. It's pretty simple.
That's my thing. It's like, they wanted confirmation that the data plans were destroyed. What more confirmed than you get than blown to smithereens in the middle of space?
You just built a moon-sized space station that can blow up the planet that you just taxed to build that space station.
Right.
So thanks for all your tax money and all the revenue. Now we're going to blow you up now that our ship's built, and you're worried about holding your fire on one escape pod because that laser bullet or whatever is going to equate to someone's salary. I don't get it. Just pull the trigger.
Yeah,
but if you're looking for data, again, if you're looking for data, you want to ensure that you found the data so you don't blow it up because it's easier to find the escape pod down on the planet and then pick up the information you look for versus sifting through rubble in space. That's my theory as to why they would not do that.
That's the only plausible explanation. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. But as for the rest of the movie, there's really nothing else I can say.
No, it's exceptionally well done. That's why it is in every corner of pop culture. That's why it's loved throughout the world. I mean, you got to be living in a hut in the middle of nowhere to not know what Star Wars is.
Right.
Everybody is at this point born knowing what Star Wars is, even if they've seen it or not, because it's in everything. You're not going to find more pop culture references to any other movie than you will for Star Wars.
Right.
I mean,
and you even got people that today, and they did like a How I Met Your Mother episode about this, where like you like there are some people out there that have never seen the movie, but they know exactly what happens.
Yeah.
Because everyone talks about it and everyone makes references of it.
Yeah.
But the thing that I want to bring up though, and I'm going to be a little what I usually wouldn't say this, but you know how we always talk about if you could do the movie today.
Yeah.
I'm going to come out and say
I don't think if you released A New Hope today with this, I don't think it would do well. I really don't think there's a way.
No, you'd have to revamp it.
I don't think there's a way you could even shift it around to make kids today like it, unless you straight up made it its own thing and like The Force Awakens, where it's that fast paced. But if you were keeping it A New Hope and you were trying to do it today, I genuinely don't think it would do well. I don't think it would catch.
No, it's not like when I had you guys watch Tron, the original Tron.
Yeah.
I had you guys watching that at a young age, so you love it. But if you take one of your friends who's never seen it, and you're like, what is this mess?
They're not going to like it, no.
But that is because it was the origins of digital animation being used in movies, and it's not as clean or as crisp, and there's not as much background. It's a pretty sparse-looking screen. But the pacing is right. The pacing of Tron is built for today's generation. It's not as flashy as Tron Legacy, but it has more substance.
Yes.
So the problem with Star Wars, with A New Hope, is it has plenty of substance. It lacks pacing. But the look of it still holds up. The pace of it is not on par with the pacing of movies. Now, you don't have an hour's worth of slow, drawn-out dialogue, character building, anything. Find me one movie in the last 20 years that has that kind of pace to it. That's an action-adventure sci-fi movie. You're not going to find it.
See, the thing that I wanted to bring up too was one of the reasons I think it wouldn't hold up today. So, look, all the new sequels are bad for their own rights, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that makes me think that it wouldn't happen was all the people my age or around my age, or the so-called nerdy kids that call themselves that my age, that would be into this kind of thing, they hated the movies for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So, like, they hated it because, things about, like, Kylo Ren. And I understand there's problems with Kylo, but Kylo's one of the better parts of the sequels, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
In my opinion,
most OT fans, and that's original trilogy if you don't know what an OT fan is,
they
like Kylo Ren.
But
because of the acting and the character development and the delivery and everything about it. Yeah, he is a little emo, but whatever.
My generation, they don't care about substance.
Yeah.
So they don't hate the sequels for a lack of substance.
Yeah.
They hate it because, one, it's kind of the popular opinion.
Yeah.
And two, because you mix a lot of the slow-paced stuff with a crappy story that nobody likes, and there's not enough of what they actually did want to see, because they hate it because the sloppily thrown together movie, they come up with the most weird drawn out reasons. And the thing that I don't like about a lot of things in my generation is there's like one part of a movie that kind of bugs them, therefore they won't watch it, and they can't stand the movie.
Well, so that brings me up to a point that I was going to want to make a minute ago, is that I'll take one shot at people that I normally don't do. But you have the holdouts who have never watched Star Wars, and they continue to not watch Star Wars as a matter of principle, just to be that holdout. So, I've never seen Star Wars. Okay.
I've never met those people.
I've met two in my life. And they wear it kind of like a badge of honor now. It's like, oh, well, I'm the only one left on the planet who hasn't. I don't know what you're trying to prove. Just watch the movies. But, okay, so, anyway. Stop trying to be a holdout and impress everybody. The fact that you haven't watched the movie that everybody on the planet has watched, just for the sake of being the only person on the planet that hasn't watched the movie. That's exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, there's one other... so you were talking about how to reimagine it for today's generation.
Right.
There's a couple things you could do. So, or what they would have to do. One, when the droids get picked up, you got to cut the walking scenes out. You got to clip those down pretty short, and have the Jawas find them right away. Have the sandcrawler scenes. You got to cut all that stuff down by a half to a quarter of its normal length, and then what you do is after Luke picks him up, you have R2 leaving, but you have R2 outrunning some Jawas or some sand people, and show that, fill in the timing with that, right? And you wouldn't even have to reshoot any original characters. Characters with face characters. It would all be suited characters or outfit characters. And then when Luke takes off, you'd have to see the Jawa tanker get attacked instead of just showing the flames and the burnt out Jawas. You'd have to show them running around and getting plucked off by stormtroopers.
See, but the thing is, we talk about like the special edits, and we talk about those little things breaking it. It would break, and it wouldn't be A New Hope.
I know, but my point is to add stuff in. If you were to retool the original movie for the modern generation for pacing and needing that excitement and action thrown in, you'd have to throw that in, and then Luke going from home after seeing Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru as crispy critter skeletons, there would have to be some stormtroopers that lingered behind to see if anybody came, and then that would have to be a chase scene between some stormtroopers and him dipping and dodging on the land speeder that takes 10 minutes of a chase scene, and then he finds Obi-Wan, and then they go to Mos Eisley. Right.
Yeah.
That would fill
pretty much.
Fill those gaps.
Yeah.
By trimming down the walking and the sitting and the looking and the glancing, cut that down to a minimum, and then fill it with an action sequence. It doesn't really change much of anything. It changes the overall feel and timing of the movie that we know and love. But it would get the attention of a younger, newer generation.
You get the general story across, but that's the only way you can do it. But like me personally, I just don't think you could do it because I don't think kids today could get. I don't think people today could get behind the concept. I don't think that Star Wars would be something kids are interested in these days.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, like Star Wars as a whole, like kids these days, like they love the prequels, right?
Yeah.
For some reason, but.
Well, it doesn't have the sarcastic, snarky. I mean, Han Solo is pretty snarky and sarcastic, but it doesn't have the meme quality, the meme culture quality of that movies do today. Where the stuff that you and sister show me, I don't get it.
See, that's the thing. You see a lot of stuff on Instagram, right? But here's one thing that I have to bring up, and I hope that a lot of these people are listening. There are some that have actually tried to make a serious case that Revenge of the Sith is the best Star Wars movie, like including Empire Strikes Back. Now I know that we're not supposed to say that,
it's not,
but if you
take me down this road,
I'm just gonna
finish your point.
But I'm just gonna say it for you. If you think Episode 3 is even comparable to anything in the OT, especially Empire, you're an idiot. There is nothing more I can say. I don't even care if you.
I don't understand you.
I don't even care if you grew up with it, because guess what? I grew up with it, and I even played the video game of it, and I watch that movie all the time. I like it, but no, it is not the best movie. It's not better than any movie in the original trilogy. And if you so much as put it in the same boxing ring as Empire Strikes Back, that is an insult, and we would throw you in jail.
Well, it's the fanboy quote. Michael Bay, all flash, no substance. The problem that I have with the prequel trilogy, the only thing I'm going to knock about the prequel trilogy is you're already pigeonholed into character arcs. So you have to follow certain things. You know what happens between Luke and Obi-Wan.
I would hate writing a story.
Well, there's no thrill to it because we already know what happens. We've seen him. Darth Vader.
That was the problem. That was the problem with Solo. It's like you see the trailer, right? And Chewie's hanging out of the train, and Solo pulls him in the last time. Like,
hey, do they make it?
I was gonna say, hey, what happens to Chewie there? Does he die? Does he lose his head? How does he grow his head back through the rest of the movie? I need these answers. And it's just that's the problem with going back and making these movies, is everybody knows how it ends. Yeah. You already spoiled the movie. How are you going to make it interesting?
Well, it's like one time when I was a kid, my dad was telling us a story. I think it was about him in Vietnam. And someone who was listening to the story asked him, well, what happened? Did you make it? Yeah, I'm here telling you the story. Of course I made it. Are you serious? Are you serious right now? It was a,
I knew for sure if I let go, I was dead. Did you hang on?
Did you make it?
No.
So it's difficult, but with what they had there, it was. I think the problem is one of the biggest. Not to go off on like a super tangent, but one of the
no, we're at the end. We've already covered all our bases. Go ahead.
There's one other thing I wanted to cover, but one of the biggest things is turning off an audience right out the gate. Right? If you walk up and kick Darth Vader in the nuggets and punk him out in the very first movie, you're trying to take away credibility of Darth Vader for the rest of the movies that I've already seen, right? You're tearing down this iconic bad guy, like the quintessential Man in Black bad guy killer, and you give him. I get that he's got a whiny origin story. Luke is whiny. They both complain about everything. So whatever, that part's fine. I think where you had people tune out the minute other than Jar Jar, that really lost people right out the gate, and that was 3 minutes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were going good until they introduced him, and then they're like, okay, I'll suffer through this, but then Anakin, they test his blood, and they do talk about the midi-chlorian count, and this is why he's going to be such a strong Force user. That's where
lame.
I think that's where and why I tuned out and don't really. From that point on, nothing that you have to say has any credibility because now you're not even speaking in reality. None of this is grounded in, and of course, reality in a fictional movie. I get it, but the point is, you just completely undermined the last 20 to 25 years of my life and my story by adding this element, and now I've tuned out anything else that you have to say for your story. I'm done listening. And I think that might be one of the biggest reasons a lot of original trilogy fans don't like it, is that you're trying to kick the heels out from underneath everything that we've known and loved.
Well, that's kind of the metaphor I was going to bring. When you're in a race and you shoot yourself in the foot, it's really, really hard to catch up.
Yeah.
So once you do that, no one's going to trust you anymore.
Yeah.
No one's going to like it. But to wrap this up...
Well, I just want to...
Yeah?
Real quick.
One last thing.
This is a movie where if you... we talk about it. We always, on the back of our minds, we always want to talk about on the classic movies. We want to do it with Tombstone, but it's too hard to come up with actors of that caliber that you can put in those characters. Sorry, can't do it. Can't be done. But if you were to take actors and plug them in to do sequel movies that picked up right after Empire, which I think they should do. I think they should tie them into the Mandalorian.
Empire or Jedi?
Sorry, Jedi. My apologies.
Yeah.
But that tie into both the Mandalorian series and go and do standalone movies, because there's a ton of books and ton of storyline out there just ready to be put into movies. So you already have Alden Ehrenreich? Or Ehrenreich? Whatever.
Alden Ehrenreich as Solo.
You already have him as Solo. I wasn't into it at first, but then once I saw Solo, I'm like, okay, I got it. It's not Harrison Ford, but I like the way he made Han Solo his own. I could see him continuing that role. I'm totally, totally good with that. Sebastian Stan is like the hands down. It's kind of like if they were to make Wolverine in the 70s, there's no question that Clint Eastwood would have been the perfect Wolverine had they done the movie back in that time. Just hands down, there's no one else, or like maybe Nicholson or something would have been, But there's certain people that you're like, okay. One, Sebastian Stan looks a ton like young Mark Hamill. He's a great actor. He can really play that role well, I think. So then Leia, there's three actresses that I can think of that could pull it off, that kind of have a similar enough look, but they help bring something different to the table. So unfortunately skewing too young for Sebastian Stan and Alden Ehrenreich to fit that timeline, you'd have to really age her up, is Millie Bobby Brown.
I thought you were going to say her.
And I know a lot of people are not fans or whatever, for whatever reason, for that idea. Too much too soon, I think, is probably one of the turnoffs. It's like, yeah, you're too young, you're not ready for this kid. But she has a close enough look. She has that spunky, feisty attitude that can, that is the young Princess Leia. And I think she could, and she has the stature and everything. Let's see. About the right age would be, what's her face from Bumblebee?
Haley Steinfeld?
Yeah, yeah. She's got the look.
Kind of.
She has a very similar look, that round cheeks and rounder nose and softer face that Leia had, that Carrie Fisher had.
I guess, but I just can't see it.
Well, if you were to take the
Like
Alden Ehrenreich Han Solo,
yeah,
and then add her into that mix, I think she could pull it off without being jarring. It's not like you're putting Angelina Jolie in as Princess Leia. That just wouldn't, you know what I mean? It would be too. It's like,
I feel like there could be something there, but when it comes to like Ender's Game and Bone, I feel like she plays the same character every time.
And that's the problem. You would sacrifice a little. I don't think you would get quite the delivery that you want.
I don't think so either.
Third, a little bit older, but around the right age for Sebastian Stan, I think, would be Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. What's her face? Peggy Carter.
Oh, Haley Atwell?
Yeah. She kind of got the look, right? The dark hair, Princess Leia look.
No. I think I can't.
You can't picture her with an English accent necessarily. She's
Yeah.
British and everything she's done.
Absolutely.
But as far as acting ability,
I'm sure she's
and
got
she's
got the acting ability, but so does Anthony Hopkins. You know what I mean? But
well, and I was going to say Anthony Hopkins would kind of be a cool Obi-Wan.
Yeah, he's a little short.
But I was thinking, but I'm like, who would you have play Obi-Wan or Tarkin?
Probably be a better Yoda. But
but I think he could pull off, maybe a younger Anthony Hopkins. I don't know so much anymore, but he could do a good Obi-Wan. I just don't know who you'd have as a classic.
Haley Steinfeld to me is pushing it, but Haley Atwell, I'm like, no. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to give options because that is a hard. You need a very strong, independent, feisty, but yet vulnerable, fragile and strong all at the same time. Kind of like the Fifth Element, right?
Right.
Where she's a super being meant to save the world, but yet she's vulnerable and needs love. It needs to be taken. There's a wonderful balance and element there, and that I think is. And you're talking about Princess Leia, who is the original, not original, but one of the. I mean, you're talking about 44 years ago, being a strong, independent female role that was just powerful.
Right.
That didn't need to be spoon-fed or forced down your throat that she's so great or so powerful. She's barking at Tarkin like it's nothing because she was a princess. She grew up, she knew him. Her adoptive father probably dealt with him on the regular in the Senate. She grew up with these people and she had no problem taking them on. She challenges Vader like it's nothing. I mean, she's bold. She's great.
And to be fair,
great character.
She never ever gave up the information on the road.
She never backed down on anything. No, she never backed down on anything.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful character.
Yeah.
So it's big. I think bigger shoes to fill than even Luke. And I know that I might get a lot of flack saying that, but Luke, how hard is it to play a starry-eyed kid that then becomes a Jedi Master? And it could be. That role could be filled pretty.
I would say it's a simpler role for sure. I wouldn't say it's less difficult.
I think easier to fill.
That's exactly what I mean. I think it's more of a simple character than I think Leia's more complicated character.
More dynamic.
That's what I mean. Yes.
So anyway, those are my things.
Yeah. So to put a nice little bow on it, this is honestly. I mean, come on, it's Star Wars. What are you gonna?
Yeah.
What do you?
It's an entire universe that has been that people have lived in, dove into, written stories. I don't know that there's more. You got fan movies, fan fiction, fan art, comic books, stories, video games, an entire land in Disneyland dedicated to it. You're not finding a bigger, intellectual property being used on any greater level. It's beyond compare. You can't beat it, and that's why I have a hard time putting Tombstone in the same.
They're a different ballgame.
carrying them on different levels as far as favorites.
Yeah,
but like I said, one's an entire universe. You can't distill it down to one movie that you like best versus a movie that just, like I said, is a little closer to home and being attainable.
This is the movie that gives everyone nostalgia.
Yeah.
This is the movie that started a generation, that started a universe. This is the one that started it all.
That's why it's my number 2. Empire is my number 1, hands down. But A New Hope will always stay number 2 in the ranking because it's where it all began.
This movie is it's never gonna
the foundation of my childhood and now everything in my life since.
It's gone down in history. It's going to stay in history,
Yeah.
and it's going to shape a lot of childhoods that haven't even happened yet.
Yeah.
That's how great this movie is.
For sure.
And the only possible bad things you can ever say about it have become jokes and have become staples of the Star Wars culture to the point where they're a strength. And the only things that you can badmouth about it are the special edits. But hey, there's still a Laserdisc out there somewhere.
Oh,
You know?
your aunt has one, and we're gonna borrow.
I know.
And
now liberate it.
Now may the 5th be with you.
Revenge of the 5th.
Revenge of the
May the
5th.
4th be with you. Happy Star Wars Day.